Let's start by deleting everything that's currently in the scene. Next, let's bring in one of the cameras. Before we import our camera, we should update the frame rate. The reason for this is that otherwise the timing of the animation will be wrong. While you should not forget to do this, you can also do it after the import, at least in Blender. In Maya, however, you have to do this beforehand, and you also have to tick a checkbox in the import window. Okay, let's change our frame rate now. Since we imported the camera with the wrong frame rate, our frame range is also wrong right now. However, we can automatically correct that after importing the backplate. Let's press the 0 key to switch into the camera view. Let's then switch to the camera settings by selecting our camera and clicking on the camera icon. And select the background image option. Right now we want to import the undistorted clip. This clip is only a proxy file. You should not use it for final rendering. After importing, we will have to increase our opacity. Alright, let's update our frame range now. To do so, let's go to the movie clip editor and select our clip. Then in our left side panel, which we can open by pressing T if it's not open already, you will find the Set Scene Frames button. Simply press it to update our frame range. Cool. Let's switch back to the 3D view. Let's try to play the video. We also have to set the render resolution to match that of our undistorted plate. You can find the required resolution in the info file. Alright, next let's create some dummy objects. The objects now correctly move with the clip. However, part of them are below the ground, they're not cut off, there's no shadows, and even if we were to turn on rendering now, we would not see correct lighting. So let's fix that next. Let's first switch to the render settings by pressing Z and going to rendered, or by clicking on the icon in the top right corner. Let's switch our render engine to cycles, and use the GPU mode to speed up the render times. Now let's load our HDRI. I will use the low resolution HDRI, since I don't plan on having any close-ups of super sharp reflections. Let's switch the input color space to linear sRGB, since that's what the file is stored in. We immediately get rid of the red color cast that way. Next, let's hide our HDRI. To do so, simply go to Film and then enable Transparent. Great, let's set up the basic compositing now. Before we can see what we're doing, we actually need to render a frame of the animation. But before we do that, let's lower our render settings a bit. For now, we can deal with a little bit of noise, so let's increase the noise threshold and also disable denoising. In addition to that, I don't want to render the full 4K plate, so I'm just going to do half resolution renders. Let's press F12 to render now. Press Shift A to open the menu with the search function and search for movie clip. In here, we can select the clip that we've previously imported already. Let's also add an alpha over node and plug in our nodes. Then we also want to view our output in here. To do that, simply Ctrl and Shift click onto the alpha over node. For this to work, you need to enable the Node Wrangle plugin if you haven't already. It's shipped with Blender by default, but disabled. Currently we are combining our 2K render with our 4K plate, which results in a scale mismatch. So let's correct that. To do so, we could either use the scale node or the transform node. The scale node allows us to just simply select render size, so it immediately corrects the issue for us. However, it doesn't let us select the scaling method. By default, it uses nearest, which is not great for us, so let's use the transform node where we can switch this option. If we don't do this, we might get pixelated results. To match the scale now, let's simply enter 0.5. We've now created our basic compositing setup. We can use this to preview our renders with the backplate. However, we will not use it for the final output.